And now it's time for A Geek Speak with
GK Technologies,
Sarah and Jodi.
In the fields again. I just can't wait to get in the fields again. The life I love is spreading potash for my friends, and I can't wait to get in the fields again. No, I can't wait to get in the fields again.
On today's podcast, we have a great conversation with Kelly Sharpe and Darin Johnson, who are the owners of GK Technology. We thought before we dove into that particular conversation, we wanted to give a little bit of a preview for some of the context around the conversation that you're going to hear. GK Technology is a company that hails out of Halstead, Minnesota, and it is a company that's a pioneering company in the world of precision agriculture and the precision agriculture industry.
What GK provides is not only software for mapping, so products like ADMS, SD Drain, SD Tile, but also mapping services.
GK Technology has ADMS software that is a precision agriculture mapping software. It really allows you to work with your data and really manipulate it and work with your data to turn it into actionable items like prescriptions or surface drainage maps. So there's a lot of flexibility with what you can do with that platform. SD Drain and SD Tile software, they are actually in the cabs of tractors, and they help farmers know where to create ditches and drop their dirt when they're doing drainage, or how to place tile in the ground.
I think it's important to talk also about how, so in general, GK Technology is a software company. And importantly, it's software that has been developed kind of at the beginning of precision agriculture and using software to take agronomic data or landscape data and aggregate it into actionable items for farmers. And it's evolved and changed a lot. It's changed a ton since Darin first started programming this in the late 90s. But importantly, it's still around too. So it's a platform that has really evolved to customer suggestions and customer needs. And we imagine a big future or a continued future of using the software and providing that support to our customers to make sure that they can get the maps that help their controllers in the field run and help farmers apply what they want, where they want it, or help them to place tile or surface drainage where they want it to be.
I also think it's important for listeners to get a little bit of context, because GK Technology is really a pioneering company in the world of precision agriculture. Darin and Kelly's background really is in agronomy. They were agronomists first. Darin Johnson is a self-taught computer programmer, and he's always been interested in tech, but he was a self-taught computer programmer, but his background was working in agronomy to bring his programming skills kind of merging with agronomy to bring to life the technology that we've got in front of us. And Kelly also, his background is in agronomy, and he was really seeing how this technology came to light. He's got a huge background working with different kinds of equipment that was kind of ingrained to him with his background. So as you listen to this podcast, I really encourage you to listen to that background of coming out of the agronomy industry and how they were able to merge that with technology and grow it into a business when, quite frankly, others were not necessarily doing that at that point in time. There were very few on the marketplace at that time. I feel very privileged to have the opportunity to work for GK Technology. It really is a great experience being able to take this technology out to farmers, agronomists, and ag retailers, helping them with their precision agriculture needs and data management needs, and accomplish what they want to accomplish. And so I really enjoyed this conversation with Darin and Kelly from that standpoint. I certainly hope that you enjoy this from the audience perspective, getting a chance to really see where GK Technology came from.
So sit back, relax, and join us in our conversation with the owners of GK Technology, Darin Johnson and Kelly Sharpe.
No, I can't wait to get in the fields again.
Darin, what really got you interested in precision agriculture?
I've always been techie, and it was always kind of a necessity. I mean, I took a job at I'd run a soil tech in the field here in Halstead. We just asked for a spare machine from a company we were doing business with, and all they had was a soil tech. So I was the only one that could figure out how to run that, so I ran that one. And then got an opportunity to take a job at Castleton, where they had the second soil tech in the country, and hadn't really put it to a lot of use, and decided that I was going to try and put it to use down there, and we did 4 fields of grid sampling, and that was before GPS, so you would go out with nobody even knows what these are anymore, Kelkinaker, and drive across the field and set out flags, and then drive for another 400 feet down the field and set another row of flags. And then you go out and sample them all and come back and send the data and the flag locations off to Minneapolis, and they would put together literally a chip that they would send back to you that you would slide into the machine and lock into place. And then since there was no GPS on the machine, you'd say, I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to drive this way. And then you would just drive that way, and the radar gun would keep track of how far down the field you were, kind of.
So I hate to ask a really basic question, but what is a soil tech?
Yeah, that was my question too.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. So even today, I believe they're still called soil techs, the 6-bin and the multi-bin machines nowadays. Oh, they were so hard to keep working that most people have gone to twin bins or things like that. But a soil tech was it had 6 product bins and 2 micronutrient bins and a couple of impregnation pumps. And I mean, it was a really rare occurrence where there wasn't, 1 or 2 bins that were broken with something, a rate sensor or of course there's you'd be chaining bins together, and if the bin sensors were out, then that function wouldn't work, and the sensors weren't very good, so you were pulling sensors off at night and setting them on a furnace in the office to have them dry out so they'd work the next day. It was always quite a challenge to keep that machine running, and that experience of those first years just made me go, I think we can let this wait a little bit.
So the soil tech itself was like the precision applicator.
Right. It was a spreader truck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was made by AgChem at the time, was it not?
L'Oreal started
L'Oreal,
it. L'Oreal started it. Yep.
Yeah.
And AgChem went out and bought soil tech away from L'Oreal. Or actually, no, there was a lawsuit, and L'Oreal won the lawsuit, and AgChem bought the company rather than pay the damages. So.
That's one business strategy, I guess. and so, like, with the soil tech, did the soil sampling part come with it, where they were like, was part of soil tech the going out and figuring out the grids, and then
No, that was to be done by the owners.
Okay.
Yep, they just did the mapping to start with. They would, because nobody had the computer power to, at the time, our computer. I think I had an IBM PC AT on my desktop, so it was, had 2 floppies. So it was the high-powered one.
And to give the podcaster listeners at home a sense of how big that was, what was the size on your what kind of space did that take up on your desktop?
An AT machine was probably 30 inches long by 10 to 12 inches tall and maybe 24 inches deep. So it was a big, good-sized case.
And what was your screen size?
It was a 12-inch. My particular one was a 12-inch amber screen. Yeah, one color.
Nice.
Yep.
One color.
Yep. Amber or black. That was the 2 colors. Sorry, it was 2 colors.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you had your choices though. You could either have amber, green, or white.
So customizable. That's so wow.
That's pretty.
Kelly cutting edge.
Yep.
And it was at the
Yep.
time.
So when did you start programming software, or what got you interested in programming software? Tell us about just starting that.
I'd always, I'd done a little programming in high school and a little bit of programming in my college career, but it was always just a hobby. And got to the fertilizer plant, and we had a fertilizer blender there that was complicated, and there was only 2 of us in the company that knew how to, manually sit down to the calculator and calculate out a blend. And calculating out a blend took a good, 5 minutes with a calculator to calculate it out, figure out what speed to run motors at, and things to put it all together. And so this might have still been there when you got to the elevator, but I wrote a package, and at that time the books in Barnes and Noble were DOS for Dummies and Business for Boneheads, and I wrote a package, and it actually had a logo that looked like the books and called it Blending for Boneheads. So,
And it was still there when I was at the elevator. You could use it. Now I could actually make a blend by hand, but it was very handy when you wanted to do something that was just quick.
Yep.
Blending for Boneheads.
Yep.
It was very awesome.
Yep. So it worked really well for our Ranco blender. It it wasn't all that difficult to figure out how many pounds of everything to have, but to get the ratios correct and figure out how many pounds are coming out of this when it's at 100% full speed, and it was a lot of work. It just took time.
And that was the stuff when you were actually in the fertilizer plant that
Yep.
you really needed that part of it.
Yep.
It was a big, big, big deal.
Yep. So anyhow, that was my first one, and then I got into further into precision agriculture again in '95 when GPS came out, and there was the big push. Shelley bought a Soil Tech, and Climax bought a Soil Tech, and my board didn't buy a Soil Tech, so I had to find something else, and I happened to find the Rockwell Vision System, and we put one of those in, and that fall, then all of a sudden we had, let's see, I'm trying to think of, this was only capable of one product that year because they were still concerned about patent infringement with AgChem, the soil tech people. And so that box that year would only do one product. Well, I'd already sold it as being able to do N and P. So I've got a picture of this someplace. But I went and got another box. Beltrami had bought the same vision system, but they weren't doing variable rate with it. So I borrowed Beltrami's vision box and a 750 monitor out of their Rogator and wired it all into my truck. So I've got 2 750s sitting on top of each other and 2 vision systems sitting on top of the other.
So you had 4 screens in that thing?
Yep. And then the AgChem people heard about it, and my AgChem rep came out and said, "Yeah, I brought some lawyers out. They'd like to take a look at this setup." And I just went, "Rise, it's not Rockwell breaking your patent this year. It's me." No, take them away. But the next spring, Rockwell did go, introduce the multi-product variable rate, and somebody said that, aren't you worried about AgChem? And the person that I talked to at Rockwell said, yeah, Rockwell's got more attorneys and AgChem's got employees, so I think we'll be okay.
That's awesome.
You know you're doing something right when the attorneys start to come out. Maybe not. This is not a legal advice podcast.
Yeah.
This is for agronomy and precision agriculture.
Yep. So, but yeah, that was the early days. I mean, there was always, you'd always think you were going to do something and you'd promise it one way, and then you'd find a limitation that said, no, you can't do that. And my days at Rockwell were a lot of, I wasn't so much in sales. I was the guy that they'd send out to train people, and it got so that I'd walk in the door and they'd say, okay, so what'd they tell you it would do? And then try and figure out how to do it. So, and some of the salespeople weren't real ethical. I mean, there was one guy that, had an LCD monochrome screen in the box, and it was going to be software upgradable to color next spring, but which was physically impossible. But, so,
That's funny.
Well, that doesn't sound any different than the Falcon 2s that they're telling people that 10 years down the road that now that they have this swath control stuff on a spinner spreader, you're going to have swath shutoff and swath rate control on it. And they're telling people this, and it's like, how are you going to do that? That's pretty impressive if you're going to get just by because other controllers in the market now have swath control. It's like no, just because they have it doesn't mean that you can do it. Now that you added auto steer to your
So Kelly, what got you interested in precision agriculture?
I was working at Crystal Sugar. Actually, I started out at Crystal in 1993, and Kelcanackers were. I was driving a 68 Camaro with a Kelcanacker on it.
Were you measuring fields with that?
Yes, I was.
Was it a fast measurement?
It was the fastest around. But all bullshit aside, that's a true story. I ran around for the summer of 93, 94, and 95 doing Kelcanackers with my car.
Crazy.
That's what I was driving at the time. So
holy cow.
So people are like, what the heck are you doing out here? Measuring your field?
I have a Kelcanacker back at my house. Do you ever get requests to let GK to take Kelcanacker readings and convert them into map boundaries? No.
Which actually, so from my standpoint, then I went to Crystal, and when I was there and ended up going full time with them in 1998, 99, we started doing field measurement, field boundary stuff, and Darin was with another company at the time, and they wrote the package for Crystal to write the boundary collection and boundary data.
The package.
Literally did. So.
Yeah, and it got used for a lot of years. I think they used it up until probably 2018 or so. But that was, it would track, it had a database in it all the way down to that compact iPack we have in our museum up front.
Yep.
And it would download, what fields had already been measured, and it could tell them, if they brought up a grower, it would tell them what fields had already been measured and what fields were left to be measured, and they'd drive out there and measure them, and then it would come back and unload itself and sync into the database. And
the other part of it is that the iPacs were just about a tax we're like popping candy in your mouth the way Crystal used them, because there was no RAM mount. We were holding them in our hands, strapping them on four-wheelers, and
They were not designed to do that.
the really cruddy, the really fragile connectors on the bottom, like just think of a USB cable on your cell phone if you were going to hold it all day and run around with it, and the USB cable had to be there. This wasn't nearly as strong as a USB cable.
No.
And those things would, probably I don't know how many days you'd get out of one before it puked, but
about a week.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
If you were doing good. You're doing good.
Yep.
So, and just so that the podcast audience out there knows, if you ever get a chance to come to the international headquarters for GK Technology in Halstead, Minnesota, we actually have a hall of fame here of a lot of the hardware equipment that was used to get GK off of the ground. There is definitely one of those iPacs sitting there, as well as Darin Johnson's original computer for writing our software package. So if you're ever through here and you want to see some of the old-fashioned stuff that made us get to where we are today, it's sitting there in the Hall of Fame.
And Kelly, what was Crystal using those measurements for? Like, what are they keeping track of? Were they starting to do precision ag back then?
Part of the contract with Crystal is that if you plant an acre, they need to be able to measure that acre. So you've got a contract with them to grow X number of acres of sugar beets, and so that was part of it. Whether you go back to the days of using the Kelcanacker, or when they added the GPS component to it, and all the wonders of the growth of the GPS component of it even. But I mean, was 1996, Darin, when they made GPS public? or opened it up to the public?
In 95, I believe.
95, 95.
Maybe even 94. But yeah.
But I mean, there would, when they made it, it was like, great, it's public, and all the manufacturers kind of went,
Now what?
Let's make
Yeah,
something.
what do I do with this?
Well, but I mean, you didn't really have a market to go buy it from. Even the government released it, and to go buy a GPS, they were only selling to.
It was tough to find. I mean, I wouldn't have known where to go buy one other than a couple of them. There were some Trimbles out there that were being put together by people in boxes with correction signals in them, and up until I think it was 2000 when the selective availability came off. Yeah. And back in those days, I mean, if you lost correction, the correction would come in. Pretty common one was from FM radio signals. It was a company called DCI, and you'd have a second correction signal coming through the FM channels. And if you lost that for a second, if it fuzzed out as you went under a tree or a power line or something, the corrections were so bad at that time that you would jump like a half a mile. Because they were being scrambled so that
Darin's being kind. I mean, it would snap to South Dakota.
Yeah,
and we're in central North Dakota. It would. I mean, we get flyer points in our data set. So when when I was working at Crystal in my internship days in 1994, we had a big steel box in the back of the 4-wheeler that you turn around and had a laptop in there. And mind you, laptops were never ever intended to be vibrated around inside of these, and we didn't know anything, so we were just taking this foam that you'd have for your camper and chopping in, putting so that you can mount this laptop up in there. And about midweek you'd take the laptop out of there, and we put a piece of plastic in that. We got smart and we put a piece of plastic in the bottom of a little pan so that you can take all the screws that fell out and put them back in the laptop, because they were vibrating around so bad in there that the screws were literally falling out of the bottom of the laptop. You'd take it out and the screen would be falling apart, and it's like, oh, this isn't what this was designed to do. But I mean, even the laptop technology now, you buy a laptop, if anyone's ever taken one apart, you now find that they are putting thread lock and stuff on them, and they weren't doing any of that stuff in this time. That the screws were just screwed in. And anyways, it's the little things that we learned that it was like, oh, well,
we need to do this differently.
Yep. Yes. And when they went away from selective availability, things started working a lot better. But keep in mind, if we ever got in a wartime situation, it could be that your GPS becomes useless very quickly. The government could very easily switch it back on, and our GPS could be accurate to within a mile instead of several feet.
And to Darin's point, it's not only that they're turning it off, but they're actually scrambling it.
Yep.
That is an interesting thing to think about. That could definitely impact things, huh?
And for you people wearing green underwear out there, John Deere does not have their own satellites in space. Correct. That is a fact.
So there it is, from the soapbox of Kelly Sharpe right there.
Oh, well, we've heard it. We've all heard it over the years. That it's the John Deere signal that we're using, and it's like, no, it's John Deere's using the same satellites as the rest of us. But I mean, these were the days that we had to go through that education with growers, because how many times did Darin hear about these John Deere satellites?
And disclaimer: nobody else out there has their own satellites either. You're using a GPS signal, so. But
from some pretty major countries,
they do have their own correction signals.
Absolutely,
right. Yeah, correct.
Absolutely,
correction. Yeah.
Something on the face of the earth.
Something on the face of the earth.
Yep.
So, out of curiosity, I've talked a little bit about what got you interested in precision agriculture, but what really was your road to getting GK Technologies started? And what did the early days of GK Technology look like for both of you? What got you starting your own company? And Kelly, what got you wanting to join up with Darin? And I think we'll start with Darin, since I know you started the company first. Yep. And then
well, and let's be clear about this as we dodge forward. It was GK Technology is actually the real name of it started out as,
which is another question that we actually had for you. What is the name of the company?
Yep. It was Geek Tech for Ag, and when I had my wife put together the logo for, we were calling it Geek geek technology for agriculture, and she just couldn't do that. So if you look at our logo to this day, there's 2 little E's inside the GK, and that's from the early days of it being Geek Tech for Ag, or GK, Geek Technology for Agriculture.
It's okay, Darin. We had your back. That's why the podcast is called Geek Eggs.
Yeah, I mean that's a really important. I think a lot of people look at the company logo and ask, what does the GK stand for?
Yep.
But I don't think a lot of people make that connection that it stands for geek.
Yeah.
And more people need cheaters apparently, because the little EE is
Yeah.
in there. So
Yep. So, and I don't know. I just had I'd been with a previous company, the one where I wrote the management software for collecting boundaries for American Crystal, and I just started seeing things for mass marketing of precision agriculture that I thought I could do to help speed things up, and that led on to another package for American Crystal where we took the field boundaries that all the agriculturists had collected and laid them in over the top of satellite imagery and cut out satellite images for every beet field in the valley, and delivered those to the agriculturalists. And the software for that first year, I think we worked for 4 months to do it, and the next year I wrote it by hand, and we got 3 or 4 people in to come and click buttons and line up satellite images. So it was really, if you think of the place where we slide images in ADMS, you click, and they just line it up, click, save, click,
Like
save.
where we're doing the satellite extract, and
Yep.
then where you line up those images.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. So they would just do that. I mean, that was all they had to do. We'd been out. We'd looked at the fields. We knew what reflectances we wanted it to set them to, what was going to be green beets, what was going to be yellow beets, and we had those numbers all built in when they started going. And the next year, I think it was less than a week to do the whole valley. But
no.
Wow.
When he says the whole valley, for those of you guys that aren't from around the area, this is a half million acres of sugar beets. So there's a
stretching
few
40 miles wide by 200 miles
200
long.
miles north south.
Yep.
Yep.
So,
But that's a lot of acres to get done in a week. 500,000 acres of sugar beets in a week versus 4 months.
yep.
Absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely.
So-
So making the point to drive home the power of some computer programming. That it goes a long ways to what when we talk about part of our motto is bringing technological solutions to agricultural problems. I mean this is it. I mean, we can make this happen, but you want to turnaround time on a field. Oh man, it's going to take if I have to go get that satellite imagery and then do the extracts and do all those steps. I mean, back then that would have been a pretty major undertaking.
And how long did it take to actually download the satellite imagery? I mean, I'm thinking about just just what internet is like today.
Dial-up
Yes.
internet.
Yep. The first year we were dial up at our first office, and then we moved and
Oh man.
got a cable modem. But still, it was only about twice dial up. I think it was when you went to download a scene. It took like 4 scenes to do the valley, and it was about a day to download each scene.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. But that was in the back. It was back in the days when Kelly was downloading MP3s, and it would take him half a day to get a song done. So.
Absolutely. No, that's exactly right. And with that being said, though, they'd get all that stuff downloaded. How long did it take you to process a scene once you got it downloaded?
Once you downloaded it, then everything had to be rotated and resampled, and that would keep a computer busy for a half a day too, at least. I can't remember exactly, but it was a long time.
So just by comparison, and just so everybody understands, because a lot of our customers go into our servers to get processed satellite imagery, and it's readily available. But how long does it take to download a scene today, and how long would it take to do that processing?
I don't know, maybe a minute for both of them combined.
So that's how things have changed.
Well, realistically, we're blessed with really good internet here at the office.
Yeah.
So realistically, about 5 minutes to download a Landsat scene. And for somebody a newbie coming in, the processing, the Landsat scene, and having to read from the book, I'll give you another 5 minutes to do the process for the guy reading from the book. Once you've done it, though, realistically, a minute to process the scene.
No, but we've got stuff in house that they download 50 scenes at a time and put them all in one directory and turn the software loose, and it just goes. So.
It does its thing. That's
Yep.
That's pretty neat to think about where we've been compared to where we are.
I think this is a really good place to stop the first half of our conversation with owners of GK Technology, Darin Johnson and Kelly Sharpe. Remember, this is just the beginning of our 2-part interview with Darin and Kelly. Next episode, we'll pick up where we left off and dive in deeper into the formation of GK Technology. In the meantime, get ready for some thought-provoking discussions and a deeper dive into the beginning of precision agriculture and GK Technology, where we have a map and an app for that. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Ag Geek Speak.
I can't wait to get in the fields again. No, I can't wait to get in the fields again.
Let the geeks at GK Technology help you with your agricultural data. Their agronomists know agriculture. When it comes to creating soils and zone maps to maximize yields in your fields, you can trust the people with decades of experience in site-specific agriculture. Everyone at GK Technology has a background in agriculture, so they know what makes a farm run, and they speak your language. The geeks at GK Technology have a map and an app for that.